Hello, Formula One fans, and welcome to Fans Forum. Finally, we are back. There is action back on circuit, and this is the place where we put you guys, the fans, in pole position, driving the conversation, as I'm sure all our eyes were on the Netherlands this weekend for the Dutch Grand Prix, where Oscar Piastri led from pole position to the checkered flag, but it was by no means a formality. With 3 safety cars, as Lando Norris had a mechanical failure, and both Ferraris DNF'd. It's not good times for the Scuderia. Alongside that, it was very popular as Isaac Hadjar took to the podium for the first time. And we'll be delving into all that and more with my VIP guest. But alongside that, we, of course, want your opinions on all the action. I can see a couple of ever presents in the chat box. Ewan, Gary, thank you so much for joining us again, my man. Get involved with the conversation and let us know what you thought. It was a jam-packed, drama-packed Grand Prix weekend, wasn't it? And my VIP guest for today is part of my Driven by Us family. Driven by Us are a charity that are looking to improve diversity and inclusion in the world of motorsport, and she is one of their podcast and content hosts. It is Debbie Canday. Debbie, welcome and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Yeah, as I said, you're part of the DBU family and you're sporting the T-shirt representing as well, which we absolutely love. James Dorner, if you're watching live or catching any of these clips, we appreciate you, my man. But listen, Debbie, before we get into covering all the action from the weekend that's just happened and what a jam-packed weekend it was, tell us a little bit about how you fell in love with motorsport or the world of Formula One in the first place.
Yeah, good question. I started watching Drive to Survive, as I'm sure many of us did during lockdown. And at the time, W Series was, on the TV. And I convinced myself that I was going to be a racing driver. I wanted to be out on track driving. That was my goal for the...
You go, girl.
Yeah, 2 years after that. So I spent some time training, karting, track days with a motorsport team. And the goal there was to win a seat to race a McLaren GT, so in the British GT race. Quickly realized that the barrier to entry was a lot higher in terms of finances. So quickly pivoted into still wanting to be part of the space. And I think that's where Driven by Us comes in. For me, anyways, I was looking for a space of like-minded individuals who I could connect with, talk about motorsports, Formula One, and also I've now found my way into kind of working with the social team and podcasting and hosting. So finding a new love within motorsports, which I absolutely love.
Absolutely brilliant. Loving hearing your journey thus far, and I'm sure you are destined for fantastic things. Of course, we were talking offline earlier as well, and you do some data analysis at the moment. Is there a way that you're hoping to combine that perhaps with the world of motorsport as well?
I mean, I'd absolutely love to. So my day job is within data analytics. We do work with a couple of motorsport teams, which I won't name, but I'm sure you can figure it out. So it's cool, you get to work with some teams, play around with their data and see the impact that they have on track. But yeah, I would love a role, analyzing some trackside data. It'd be really cool.
What an absolute weekend it was. And it's great that you actually talk about data as well. It's a fantastic place to start because, of course, the Papaya Boys went toe to toe this weekend and the devil was in the detail. If we talk about data, we know that these guys are so close. The pole position was something like 12 milliseconds, I believe, between Oscar on pole and Lando in P2. And data is coming into the battle, isn't it? They're looking at each other's performance on circuit and they're seeing where they can make those marginal gains. I remember earlier in the weekend, Jack Villeneuve was saying that Lando seemed to have the advantage on the banked corners. But overnight, Oscar clearly went and did his homework because it was Oscar that sealed the pole position. What did you make of all the qualifying and the malarkey there?
Yeah, I mean, qualifying is becoming closer and closer as we sort of get to the end of the Formula One season. And particularly with McLaren, they have a great car. So it is down to how can you find those margins? How can you make it up on track? And we're seeing some great racing from both sides, from both Oscar and Norris. So it'll be interesting to see, especially as we start to go out onto different tracks, you know, their strength. Each of them will have different strengths, whether that's street circuits, which I think Norris typically favors, versus, you know, some of your traditional circuits. So we've got a really exciting second half of the season up ahead of us.
You could say during the race that neither driver put a foot wrong. It worked out for Oscar, but heartbreak for Lando. What was your initial reaction because I think on the broadcast as well, we heard a radio call first from Lando, didn't we, saying that he could smell smoke. What was your thoughts on that?
I was heartbroken for Norris because he has put a shift in and that's going back, you know, seasons and seasons. So they both, you know, drove exceptionally, and it was just down to unfortunate luck for Norris that, you know, he was having reliability issues. But I think it was even said on the broadcast, for the championship to be decided by car reliability would be such a shame. And I feel like we'll be, you know, going, you know, all that hard work that was put in would be kind of undone. So it's really close. They're both incredible drivers, and to even see Oscar in his, you know, he's no longer a rookie, but to do so well within the team is definitely putting pressure on Norris.
Yeah, it's great to see Ree from Too Much Sorted in the chat box as well. She's saying that Oscar is the guy, but I'm pretty sure she would have been heartbroken for Lando at the same time. What I love amongst a lot of the content creators out there, we just want to see great racing, and we love the storylines and the personalities behind it all. Gary making a great point that it's a Mercedes power unit issue once again. They had a couple, didn't they, earlier in the season with the Mercedes Works team. And he's even making the point that McLaren and Ferrari are sabotaged by Mercedes. Gary, we will get into Kimi Antonelli a little bit later, all right? But Debbie, for me, when I looked at it, like I said, Lando almost didn't put a foot wrong to a certain extent. I know he lost out to Max early on at the start, but it was kind of similar to the previous Grand Prix in Hungary, that Lando made such a good start that he then got squeezed and had to take his foot off the pedal, and that is what allowed Max in. So again, I don't think you could really criticize Lando there. It feels like the gods almost took over on behalf of Oscar this weekend, doesn't it? So this mechanical failure, but also in qualifying, when Karan Chandhok was looking back with Oscar, there was a tiny little toe that he took on one of the straights as well. Do you think that's going to be the difference between these two? It's not even really going to be in their ability. It's just going to be some form of luck for the conclusion of the season.
I mean, I hope not. I hope we can see, you know, some great racing and the better driver come out on top, but they're both so close. And that begs the question, can or will McLaren prioritize a driver? Will they prioritize Lando or Norris? Because with great strategy, they'll get the drivers' championship, which they're teed up to get, but also the constructors. And so my question to you, James, is do you think McLaren should make a decision and prioritize a driver?
I don't think they need to at the moment, do they? They're so far ahead in the constructors. As long as they remain level-headed and fairly race, they shouldn't have to. There's only the point of strategy to a certain extent. Whatever car's leading in the race at the time, you're going to have to prioritize the front-running car, aren't you? And, you know, particularly issues like double stacking the car when you're going up against other teams. Or it could be that maybe the driver that's starting in P2 even tries an alternative strategy. That's the only way, really, you're going to look at beating your competitor. And we're going to get onto Red Bull in a minute, but that's what I really loved about Red Bull this weekend. They tried something a little different from McLaren rather than just going, oh, we'll settle for P2. So it was really good to see them pushing. And I think perhaps the second driver in every race for the rest of the season we'll have to do that. We'll have to try something a little out of the box to see if they can get the upper hand and advantage. But also I want to ask you, Debbie, if Lando Norris doesn't win this World Championship, is it going to be mistakes before now that have cost him? When we look at some of the things that happened earlier in the season where there was a start penalty for a false start, wasn't there? There was a shunt in qualifying in Saudi, and there was also the contact in Canada. If you look at those three areas, they could probably still be pretty level on points even after this mechanical failure, couldn't they?
Absolutely. I think those mistakes, we might see do cost Norris the opportunity to win Drivers' Championship. And that's such a shame because I feel like we've seen such great progression from Norris over the past seasons and this season to come. So, and that is what Formula One is. It is about driving to perfection, that world-class driver championship. And so for Oscar to have such an incredible run to date, and he's so early in his career, begs to differ because, in the next couple of years' time, it'll be so interesting to see where he is. But I think those mistakes will cost Norris, but we'll have to see.
Gary just filling in the gaps for us there, reminding us that it was Canada. Yes, that's right, Gaz. Montreal as our unofficial third host in the show. As always, Gary, thank you for that. Let's talk about then the talent of Oscar Piastri in, let's say, closing the gap to Lando Norris in just 3 seasons. What do you make of him as a talent? Is he what kind of level is he? Is he the real deal? I mean, Jacques Villeneuve was on the show this weekend for the Sky Sports broadcast, and he mentioned like levels of driver, and he only put Max and Fernando Alonso above the rest of the grid. But what's your opinion of Oscar Piastri in the few short years that we've seen of him so far?
I think he's an incredible driver and he has such great talent. And not to compare Lando with Oscar, but it's natural because they're both in the same team. But it took Lando maybe 110 races to get his first win, which we saw in Miami. Last season we saw Oscar Piastri, I think he got like 89 points. Please fact check me, Gary, if I'm right. 89 points last season. Which is more than we've seen the Max Verstappens, the Lewis Hamiltons of the world do. So
I think that was in his rookie season, wasn't it? That was his rookie season, 89 points, and then last season he got quite substantial, over 200, I think it was.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know the point you're making.
Yeah, he's had such a great career to date, and he's still learning, which I think is so exciting and interesting to see what will happen in 2026. But yeah, it's incredible talent.
Yeah, if we look at the chat box as well, some people reiterating that. Ree just saying that it's sad to say, but she feels that Oscar's just got something that Lando doesn't have. Gary loving the pure raw talent that Oscar Piastri is. And I think he's one of those few as well to have concurrently won F3 and F2 titles in rookie seasons as well, isn't he, before the transition into F1. Ewan just saying that he reminds him a lot of Alan Prost as well. So yeah, just very level-headed at all times and absolutely clinical. I just want to talk about the opportunity that both these drivers have got this season, because another point that Jacques Villeneuve made on the broadcast was, we got to remember there's a regs reset next year. This could potentially be both drivers' only opportunity, because we don't know who's going to be where for the new set of regulations. And we know McLaren are over half a second ahead at the moment across all competitors. But what extra level does that put? What extra pressure perhaps is playing on the drivers because of that, do you think, Debbie?
I mean, if you're so close to the win, everything kind of goes out the window because you are so desperate for that win. And I think that's why we're seeing that extra layer of emotion, whether it's a win or not, it's coming down to the wire. And so, he is right. This is probably one of their only chances to absolutely secure a double win in both the driver championship and the constructors, which I believe they will. So there's going to be that extra level of stress, pressure, and that mental as well that definitely needs to be worked on.
Well, I'll tell you what, Debbie, before we push it forward then, let me put you on the spot. Who's going to be your Drivers' World Champion for the 2025 season, and why is it just them that's going to pip their teammate?
I think it's Oscar Piastri. I really do think it's him. He has, such a level head, to your point. He's able to keep it cool under pressure, whereas I feel like we've seen Norris sometimes, fumble a little bit when he is under pressure from his opponents. But I think if Oscar continues to drive at the level that he's driving in, continues to remain calm and do the work, look at the data, review it and improve, I think he'll win the championship this year.
And just backing that up, Gary doing his homework, saying that he's equaled Mark Webber's record now. He has indeed, Gaz, and also for the most wins by an Australian in a season, I believe, as well now, Oscar Piastri. But listen, Debbie, let's push it forward then and look at the Red Bull team, who had a productive weekend, you would say. Max Verstappen doing the best he could, really, to maintain some kind of competitiveness at the front of the race. And it's only their 4th double points of the season, as Yuki Tsunoda also managed to squeeze into the top 10. Let's go back to the point I made earlier. How impressed were you with their alternate tyre strategy, in a sense of that they didn't just try and go run of the mill and go, well, we'll settle for P2. They tried to do something different. That's refreshing to see, isn't it, at the front of the grid when McLaren have such an advantage?
Absolutely refreshing to see. It's a risk which they took on Max's, Max's home race. And I think that's, trying something new, seeing what the data says, I think is so positive because you learn so much. It's either going to pay off or it's not. And we saw in this case, it did work. They probably gathered so much data which they can then take on and utilize in other races. But it was really nice to see Red Bull kind of step out of their box a little bit.
What did you make of Max a few races ago said that he thinks that they'll struggle as a team to win another race this season? Do you think that that's down to the performance of their car or the performance of the McLaren that he's making that point?
I think it's based on the performance of the McLaren. I mean, coming into the season, McLaren's car was way ahead of a lot of the cars. And I think from a Red Bull's perspective, if you're sort of their team principal or you're looking after the car as an engineer, you're not necessarily focused on the development of your car this season because your car was the best last season and the previous season. So I'm not sure.
Oh, I think we've lost Debbie for a second there. Hopefully she'll be back with us ASAP and will be able to give us her thoughts on the performance across the rest of the season for Red Bull. But Yuki Tsunoda as well, as I mentioned, so scoring points, only their 4th double points of the season. They've been under pressure, haven't they? And let us know in the chat box, guys, what do you think? So Yuki Tsunoda, what have you made of his season so far? What did you make of his performance across this Grand Prix weekend? In fact, Jack Villeneuve, big statement from him as well. And this is why I love Villeneuve and Nico Rosberg. I feel because of their weight as former champions, they can just say what they like, right? Now, Villeneuve has said, Red Bull know that Yuki is not good enough and that the only reason he is where he is because of his backing from Honda. What do you guys in the chat box make of that? Let me know. That's what we got in there. Okay, so Ree saying that she feels for him. Okay, yeah, not built for anyone but Max, the car. Yeah, I'd agree, Ree, but even Max is struggling to drive that one now, isn't he? And then Gary's saying as well, a solid drive from Yuki Tsunoda. Yeah, it was a solid drive, but he's just not, I feel that he could be doing better, possibly. What do you guys think out there? Do you think that Yuki could be doing better across a Grand Prix weekend? Do you think there's part of his motivation, perhaps, that's even gone? Ree saying that she doesn't think that Yuki will be in the seat next year. Who do you think will be in it then, Ree, interestingly enough? There's not that many drivers out there, although, of course, we've got the whole George Russell contract situation at the moment as well that has not been concluded. Why do you think Mercedes are waiting so long? Or is it no longer Mercedes? Is it George that now holds the power after his performances this season? Again, in the chat box, let me know what you think. Oh, no, Ree, don't say that. So Ree's saying that she thinks it's going to be Isaac Hadjar, or Isaac Hadjar, as we now know it's pronounced, after Lauren McKees let us know on the broadcast the other week. And it's quite funny, after that, you've noticed that all of the commentary now, they are saying Isaac Hadjar, but Isaac is the French pronunciation, isn't it, of Isaac that we say, anglicized. But hey, if he wants to be called Isaac, we can call him Isaac. But yeah, Ree, you're right, Hadjar, they'll be looking at him. But then also, do you think, because they were saying, weren't they, for many years that the Red Bull Junior team they wanted to bring closer to the senior team to aid performance. But do you think now they might want to bring the Red Bull team closer to the VCARB team for performance? Because it seems like they've got a really good car underneath them, don't they? Particularly Liam Lawson now seems to have found his feet in that car as well. Let me know what you think in the chat box. Red Bull need to be delegated to their sister team and VCARB can take over. Well, maybe that's why they brought Lauren McKees in the first place. I think we've got Debbie back now. Debbie, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you. Apologies.
Great stuff. We've been having some chats in the chat box anyway and talking about Yuki Tsunoda and what we think is going to happen. To bring you up to speed, Ree is saying that she doesn't think Yuki will be in that second seat next season. It's a big statement. Why do you think that is, Debbie? Why do you think some people would be saying that? And what's your opinion on the second seat at Red Bull for 2026?
I think 2026, we're going to see a clean slate, so a nice reset. That second seat for Red Bull is going to be so important in order for them to secure their dominance going into the 2026 regulations. I think to say that Yuki might not have that seat is a very brazen statement to make because, you know, he was put into that seat mid-season. And so I think...
Is he motivated though? This is what when you were offline a moment ago, I was saying that's the question. It almost feels like Yuki's half-hearted now. He's just given up. He's just cruising around. And I think so where did he finish at the weekend? Yuki finished in P9, so he crept in. So he still would have been P10 without Antonelli's penalties. But it just feels like he's nonchalantly driving around now rather than pushing that car to its best. What do you think?
But then I posed the question, is it Yuki or is it the car itself? Because we've seen a lot of the times drivers that are in that second seat at Red Bull, the car isn't tailored for them. And I think when we're going into the 2026 season, I would like to see a car that is tailored to fit both drivers, not just Max Verstappen. And so if they can get that right, I'm sure that second driver would feel empowered and perhaps motivated to drive and drive well.
So then, Debbie, do you think that Yuki should get 2026 then? And if he doesn't, could Isaac Hadjar be in with a chance of that second seat? And would we want him to go there as much as we're enjoying him at VCARB currently?
I would like to see Yuki in that second seat at Red Bull. I think he's done really well this season, coming in midway and just, you know, driving the car, you know, getting some points, which I think is the most important thing for Red Bull. I think with Isaac Hadjar, I would like to see him kind of go down the Alex Albon route where, you know, he kind of stepped away to Williams. I'd like to see him at perhaps a midfield team and, you know, taking that to the top because I think that's where the opportunity might be.
Surely Red Bull would not let him do that at the moment, though, with his performance. But listen, you know what? We'll get into them in a minute. Just real quick, Ewan is saying that Red Bull are getting their karma for how they treated Sergio Perez. What do you think Sergio Perez is making of this performance? And is it going to be a good carrot for him next season? And we're going to talk about Cadillac in a bit. But is it going to be great for Perez when he's alongside a Red Bull next year? And is he really going to go for it, do you think?
I think he is going to go for it. And why wouldn't you? I mean, to sit next to your, you know, previous team, you're going to really go for it and sort of say, well, this is, you know, you should have kept me and this is why. And I think we're going to see some great racing from Sergio Perez, I hope. But no, I kind of agree. It might be a little bit of karma.
and Reece saying, and Daniel Ricciardo, I'm going to put my 2 pence in on this one. I somewhat disagree with that. I think Ricciardo was in the twilight of his career. And although the Red Bull wasn't ideal to drive, he had a good stint at VCARB as well and was just being constantly outperformed by Yuki, wasn't he?
Yeah, he really was. I think he should have left in his own time versus the way that he did. But, you know, he's had a great career years ago. So... yeah, wishing him the best.
Yeah, listen, but we can all have our favourite drivers. It's fine, and we miss him too for his personality. But Debbie, listen, let's push it forwards and talk about the Red Bull Junior team, who again are punching above their weight, and it was a very popular Isaac Hadjar on the third step of the podium, securing his first ever podium in the world of Formula One. What have you made of Isaac, not just across this weekend, across the season? The young man has really proved the point, hasn't he, from the low point of starting the season in Australia?
Exactly. If we look at where he started to where he is now, he's had such an incredible journey, which I'm sure he's learned loads from. So for him to be able to stand on that podium must be such a great feeling. But he's, sort of, your rookie year is not easy. And he's had, great qualifyings. He's been able to convert it throughout the season into some points. So it's great to see him up there even now in the championship standings, alongside some of your favorite drivers. I think it's like he's just below Fernando Alonso. So I think
he's just above him. He's 10th in the championship drivers, which is brilliant, like you said. And Ree making the point that he is her favorite content creator. He's a fantastic personality as well, isn't he? And perhaps will fill the void left by the likes of Daniel Ricciardo, i.e. doesn't take himself too seriously.
I think we need that. We need some fun on the grid sometimes, and he's a great personality. So yeah, I definitely agree. He's also my
next
favorite
week. Gary making the point, wants to see what he does next week. The Temple of Speed, Monza. Give us your insight, Gaz. I'm not too sure. I don't know whether that V-carb has got much straight line speed and high speed corners, but if you know better than me, then let us know, Gaz. More importantly, the Temple of Speed. I'm sure Ferrari fans out there will want a little bit of a retribution from what the gods threw them this weekend. But before we conclude V-carb, in fact, Debbie, let's talk about Liam Lawson as well, who is going silently about his business. There were 3 safety cars during the race, which wrecked some drivers' performance. Lawson might have lost out at particular points. There was a bit of a elbows out with Carlos Sainz that happened. But fundamentally, his qualifying has returned now. And that's a foundation to build your weekend over, isn't it?
Exactly. He had such a strong qualifying. Was he able to convert that, obviously, throughout the race? There were things that happened, but to have such a strong qualifying gives you so much confidence going into the race. I was curious about his strategy. Obviously, he didn't have any other tires aside from softs, or medium tires. So that was quite interesting. I don't know whether that hindered his strategy. Maybe he was perhaps limited, but he's, getting more and more comfortable this season.
It just shows you, if you put a bit of a nice warm arm around a young man, that he can bounce back, right? And I know the Red Bull family aren't known for doing that. But yeah, he's proving a lot of people wrong. I think a lot of people, I don't even want to say failed at Red Bull because he got 2 races, but a lot of people didn't seem to like the look of him on Drive to Survive. I didn't really feel it, that he was over egotistical, but they just was like, no, he hasn't got it. But he's now bouncing back. This weekend was his 3rd Q3 appearance in a row, and he's scored points in 4 out of the last 8 races. So would you say his position in that team is safe for next season, 2026?
I think so. I think the racing, he's done he's having a consistent, season this year, and sort of made his redemption and proven that he can drive a car. He can drive a midfield car. Can he win a race? I don't know, because his teammate has been able to sort of step on the podium. So it'll be interesting to see if he can, improve or do better than his teammate. I think that's where we'll start to see the comparison between them.
Yeah, because I guess the difficult thing in that second Red Bull team is all they're trying to do is develop drivers to go in the senior team. So you are even more so up against your teammate, because you're not just looking to do well in that team. It's like, well, whoever's doing best in that team is going to be promoted. And as long as Max is there, there's only going to be 1 seat. So there's a lot of battling to do there. Last little wildfire question on V-carb. If Max Verstappen was put in that car, what would he be doing?
I think we've seen that the car can be a top 3 contender. So my question would be, what is the gap, from it being consistently in the top 3? Was it just a good day? If Max was in the car, I think we could probably see it in the top 5. The top 5, we've got a strong top 5 or top 6. I think we could potentially see the car there.
Okay, fair enough. Fair. I guess we'll never know, though, is the long and short of
Never
it.
know.
But this is why we love doing this stuff and talking F1 and the culture in and around it, because as fans, we just want to be able to give our 2 pence worth. But we will move it
Absolutely.
forward, Debbie, and talk about Mercedes, the Silver Arrows. George Russell doing his Mr. Dependable once again. Kimi Antonelli doesn't really seem that a summer reset has kicked in for him. But let's start first with George Russell. Even after the Charles Leclerc incident, still scoring good points, managing to finish in 4th in the race. Why doesn't George Russell have a new contract yet? And who holds the weight in those discussions now? I think it was very clearly the team at the beginning of the season. Is that starting to swing a little bit now?
I think so. I think we are starting to see the power swing into George Russell's favor. And that begs the question, well, who else is talking to George Russell? There were talks that potentially it was Cadillac. Obviously, it's not. But I don't think Mercedes want to lose George. And so I think they're going to be putting in a shift to get him to sign that contract.
Yeah, we have to remember it's a big contract for George. 27 years old now. If it's 4 or 5 years, this is his peak moment, isn't it? And we don't know how the grid's going to line up next year with the regs change. So it's a big commitment to go, right, this is my team now for George Russell, because this could be his last chance to challenge for a world championship. How much does the performance of Kimi Antonelli play on what's going on with George Russell? Because they don't want to end up with 2 empty seats, do they?
No, absolutely not. I think from George's perspective, he wants a win. And so Mercedes need to deliver a championship winning car. And I don't know at what point he gets to see the car or see the development of the car. I think with Kimi Antonelli, if he's able to perform better than George, I think that will be a worry going into 2026 for George, because then you've got an element similar to what you're seeing now with Mercedes, Mercedes with McLaren, where you've got 2 incredible drivers. And I don't think George wants to fight for this, well, not with his teammate anyways, for this win, but that is the nature of racing.
He wants to be number 1. But let's be honest, Gary's making the point. Kimi seems to have lost his edge. Can you see any world, shape or form that Kimi Antonelli will outperform George Russell anytime soon in Formula 1?
No, I think as we've kind of gone throughout the season, his performance has declined a little bit. We saw Kimi Antonelli, hitting the ground running or hitting the track driving towards the beginning of the season. So
why do you think that is, Debbie? What do you think's happened?
I don't know whether it's the developments or upgrades they've done to the car means that he's struggling, or whether it's just the performance of everyone else. But we're seeing him make, these small mistakes which are costing him in the long run, which is a shame to see, a real shame.
Toto Wolff has come out with public backing, saying we have no doubts about the young talent that is Kimi Antonelli. Can that be maintained, though? So let's say Antonelli doesn't pick up for the season. I talked really early on, it may have even been in pre-season, and just saying this rookie's coming in, but we've got to remember this is big business as well, isn't it? With big business, you've got your partners that are invested in the team just as much as the team itself, and they invest because they want to be associated with success. So George is doing his thing. Let's say they re-sign George, but let's say they don't have the strongest power unit next season. Let's say George leaves. Like, who's going to be the talisman and lead that team in the cockpit?
I mean, sometimes I do forget that Kimi is a rookie. And so he is still learning. But that first seat, and I think from Kimi's perspective, he needs to prove that he is ready to take on that first seat if George does decide that he doesn't want to sign, this is the opportunity where he can showcase that he is ready. Unfortunately, he's making these, silly mistakes, which are costing him in the long run.
Yeah, Ewan, if you see on the screen there, Ewan making the point. So we're not even just talking in race mistakes. And of course, there was the Charles Leclerc incident. It's also things like the speeding in the pits that he got the second penalty for as well. Gary using the word complacency. So maybe because he hit the ground running, maybe there's a part of him psychologically. I'm not saying this, but I think this is what Gary's interpreting. There's a part psychologically where he's just gone, oh, brilliant, F1, I've got this too.
Yeah, and that's not a comfortable position, well, not a position that I'd want to be in, because we've seen across the grid that teams are very quick to swap their drivers in and out, which isn't it's not very nice, but that has happened. Your seat isn't necessarily guaranteed. So I think from Kimi's perspective, he does need to sort of start to tighten up a little bit and, earn his seat for next season.
Do you think there's any shape or form where he could be loaned out to another team next season? And would that aid him as well, perhaps?
I don't think it's very Mercedes-like to either replace him mid-season or loan him out. I think they're the type of team where if you're our driver, that is it, and we're going to, work with you.
What about 26 though?
Well, we see a different opportunity there, and I wonder if the car is who the car is suited for, whether that's George or Kimi or perhaps both. But I don't see them loaning out Kimi, especially if Toto's come out to back him. I think that'd be quite sad, to be honest.
Yeah, it would. And it would be interesting to see how he bounces back as a character. We've used the example of Isaac Hadjar and what he did after a tough start. And yeah, Kimi seems to be in a bit of a trough at the moment, and after starting on a peak, but hopefully he can peak and bounce back again soon. And then, of course, this whole George Russell contract situation. I mean, let us know in the comments box, guys. Where do you think George Russell will be racing next season? And is it George that now holds the weight in those contract negotiations? Whilst you guys do that, though, myself and Debbie will push it forwards and talk a little bit about Atlassian Williams Racing, who it was a decent weekend for them in a sense of Alex Albon went from P15 on the grid to end up finishing 5th. But Carlos Sainz went the other way. So if we talk about luck of the gods once again, it feels like Carlos Sainz hasn't quite had it at Williams recently. No point scores in the last 5 Grand Prix. But Alex Albon turned around what was a difficult qualifying session, didn't he? What did you make of Williams' performance this weekend?
Williams always continue to blow my mind race upon race, and they just go from strength to strength, which is just a beautiful story in itself. I think it's interesting with Carlos coming in, I think we perhaps saw him as the saving grace to just kind of, push Williams forward even more. But actually we're seeing that Albon is doing that, and he's doing that so well, so consistently. And we're seeing again, Carlos, making silly mistakes, or just a series of unfortunate events that's mean that he's not been able to be consistent throughout qualifying, which matters the most.
Could anybody be tapping up Alex Albon, do you think, behind the scenes? From what we've seen from him, because you're completely right in a sense that Carlos Sainz was seen as the big summer signing for them. Winter signing in Formula One. But the big winter signing for them. But it's stepped up Alex Albon's game. What does that do for his status on the grid? We know it didn't work out at Red Bull. Is he going to sit it out forever at Williams, or could there be teams like Mercedes and Red Bull having conversations behind the scenes?
That would be really interesting if Mercedes were to start having conversations with Alex, especially. I think he deserves it. He has been with that team for a while and has been so integral to their journey so far. I think it will be a shame if, I guess, for the story or for the narrative, if Alex was to leave so soon before getting any type of win with Williams. So from a fan perspective, I'd like to see him there for at least maybe a year or two before moving.
Yeah, just had a quick Google. He's 29 years old now, though, Alex Albon. So again, this next 2-3 years is the moment if he's sitting there at home thinking, I believe I could be a world champion, I've bounced back from this Red Bull experience, it would be the time to move, wouldn't it? It would be, if it wasn't this year, let's say at the end of 2026, when we see how the ground lies, we know that there's a driver in there now in the shape of Alex Albon. It wasn't just a little bit of luck at Toro Rosso and then he went to Red Bull and it all fell apart. No, there's a good driver in there. Big shout out to Pete Johnson, who's just finished watching the race. Welcome to Proceedings, Pete, and catching up on everything. We've covered a few teams already, but we're currently in and around Williams and just talking about Alex Albon's performance, which was great this weekend, and what perhaps the future holds for him. So Alex Albon, I think, could be on a lot of radars, perhaps at the end of the 2026 season, depending, of course, on how Williams do. Are they still... I'll throw this over to Gary. Gary, are Williams still Mercedes partners for the power unit next season? Let us know, Gaz, because I'm sure that will come into play as well with that scenario. Carlos Sainz, though, as you said, Debbie, struggling a little bit with form at the moment. Again, what do you think for the rest of the season for Carlos is the remit then, really? How does he bounce back from this trough that he finds himself in at the moment?
I mean, he's done it before. We've seen this when he was at Ferrari, where he's kind of had a dip in performance. But Carlos does come alive, as does Albon on street circuits. And we're going to have some great racing coming up. We've got Singapore, obviously Monza's first. But I think that will, start to activate him. And I'm hoping we'll see some great racing, but just even consistent racing, because I think from Williams, they're not necessarily looking for a win. They just want to maximize the amount of points they get each race. And I think if Carlos can do that, that will be enough this season.
Yeah, and particularly after the performance of Aston Martin, who seem to have bounced back, it's going to be integral for Williams' P5 position in the championship that both their drivers start to regularly score, because Aston Martin really seem to have turned it round, and there's 18 points between them in the Constructors' Championship. That's still a lot up for grabs across the last 9 races. Let's push it forward, Debbie, and just discuss the performance of Haas, who, hat off to them with the alternative strategy, who did 53 laps before they changed their tyres, and it meant that they were double points finishers. I mean, tip your hat to the strategy team and Ao Komatsu and everyone else involved. And it was brilliant to see Ollie Behrman finally get back in the points, wasn't it? There was a lot expected from Ollie after great performances in the Haas and Ferrari last season. And he's been on a little bit of a barren spell, hasn't he? He must be delighted with this weekend.
Yeah, it was an incredible race for Ollie this season and this race. And I think that does wonders to your confidence. And I'm so excited to see him next week at Monza, because he's just going to be feeding off all that adrenaline. So yeah, incredible performance from Ollie.
Yeah, we've got to remember as well. So they're like a little baby Ferrari team as well, aren't they, with their Ferrari power unit? So I'm sure they'll be looking to make the most of performance at the Temple of Speed. Esteban Ocon as well. The last nice little stat is that he's now had more points finishes this season than he did at Alpine last season. So it seems like a good move for the Frenchman, doesn't it? Because I know there was a lot of eyebrows raised perhaps when he went to Haas.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just validates that you've made the right decision. Again, so curious to see what happens to Haas, but for the rest of the season, and whether they can be consistent between them. But yeah, I think the move was incredible and has done wonders for his career to date.
We're just going to turn our attention quickly. Seeing as we're talking about the American team that currently exists in the world of Formula One, of course, Debbie, there was a huge announcement about the big American team coming to Formula One in 2026. Cadillac have announced their 2 drivers, and they've gone for experience. Sergio Perez, Valtteri Bottas. Between them, 16 race wins, 106 podiums, 23 pole positions. What do you make of that announcement, Debbie? Slightly surprised that they went for both experience, or do you think it's a good bet for the team in their first sightings of Formula One?
I think this was such a good decision to go for two second drivers who have so much experience working with a championship winning team and driver. And I
Mm.
think they are going to be such a powerhouse together in terms of experience, data, knowledge that they have between them. I would like to see, good team collaboration, and I'm really excited to see them challenge the rest of the teams next season.
Gary making the point and just saying that he called it a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, I think what you want is, and we've discussed this with Lewis Hamilton and talking about all of his experience going into Ferrari, but what Cadillac now have is two top consultants to look at all the intricacies and processes going on in that team that will be able to bring you everything that happens at the successful Red Bull team, everything that's happened with all that success across the Mercedes team in the hybrid era. And they'll be able to say, look, if you want it done right, this is how you do it. And so maybe if you only keep them for 2 seasons, one of them, and then you let one go and bring in a rookie, the millions that they're paying are going to be worth it because of all the knowledge that they have, aren't they?
Exactly. And I think that's going to be key to their success. Both great drivers. Valtteri Bottas is honestly one of my favorite drivers. I no idea why, but absolutely love him. So to see him back on the grid, see Perez back as well, have an opportunity to drive again next year is going to be really exciting.
Ewan, just bringing us up to date on all statistics. 527 Grand Prix raced between them as well. So thank you for that little cherry on the icing of our details there, Ewan. Much appreciated. Gary making a great point. Well, as long as they tap into that experience, unlike, I'm just going to say other teams, Gaz. All right, I'm not going to point too many fingers too harshly. But yeah, we look forward to an 11th team on the grid for 2026, of course. The more competitiveness, the better in the world of Formula One. Let's return to the Dutch Grand Prix and performances. And we've not got that long left. And of course, we've got a big one to talk about, Debbie, right at the end of the show. And the reason they're right at the end is because they got a double DNF. So let's try and flip through these ones coming up. First up, Aston Martin. It feels like they've had a bit of a bounce back, doesn't it? Lance Stroll mentioned a couple of weeks ago that the car looked quick. They went for a counter strategy with Lance, who started from the back of the grid. It worked out because Lance finished in the points. So did his teammate Fernando Alonso. I want to go first up with why does Lance Stroll still get so much negativity from people? He's currently sitting above his teammate in the championship. I know he makes some mistakes, don't get me wrong, but the first person you got to beat is your teammate, and he's currently beating double world champion Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate with Stroll, just his narrative, the PR, the media around him is not great. And I think that hinders his, great results. He, like to your point, is doing so well in the championship when compared to his teammate.
Well,
and it's just unfortunate.
There's 2 points in it, but his teammate is a serious benchmark. Jack Villeneuve said that he believed that Alonso has his head just above the rest of the grid, and then there's Max Verstappen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's just the poor press and media, but I think Aston Martin as a collective is such a great team.
Yeah, big shout out to his engineers, as Gary's making the point as well, right? There was a big shunt that Lance had, and then he went off in the gravel as well. And I think he kind of nudged the nose of the car. So I don't know how much damage was done in Q1, but there was a big shunt in free practice. They've got that car back together, and Lance has put it in the points. What are you expecting for the rest of the season from them? I mentioned that currently they're sitting in P6, only 18 points behind Williams now. Should Williams be worried? And then should Aston Martin be looking over their shoulder because Racing Bulls are only 2 points behind?
I think Williams should be worried. I think you've got some great experience, some great drivers at Aston Martin, and I can only imagine that they're just going to double down on their strategy and what's worked well in the second half of the season. So I hope. I don't believe Racing Bulls is going to be a threat for Aston Martin, in my opinion.
I'm going to clip that, mate, at the end of the season. You know that.
I don't think so. I really don't think so. I don't think they're going to be a threat. I think Aston Martin are going to continue to be consistent as they have been.
Okay, great stuff. We'll see how it pans out. Hey, Alpine.
Yeah.
The French team seems to have some real problems at the moment. Didn't have a great race weekend. Briatore coming out and talking about the Colapinto issue still and just saying he's not doing what he would have expected. He's 9 races in now, Franco Colapinto. We know that Pierre Gasly is probably punching above his weight with regards to that car's performance. But they're last in the championship now by 24 points. What are they going to do? Does it feel like this season is gone and it's all eyes on 26? How's that team going to look in 26, do you think? They have got the Mercedes power unit coming for the new regs. And there's a lot of rumours that the management could involve a certain Christian Horner I've seen around. What have you made of all that stuff?
I know. It'll be interesting because Christian has such a plethora of experience as it relates to running a championship winning team. He's been through all types of scenarios. So it'll be interesting if they do bring Christian on board and what the dynamic will be in terms of the team. I think it can only be positive and they can only benefit so much, taking a leaf out of the Red Bull playbook. But Alpine have declined, I would say, if I was to compare their performance last season to this season, which is a little bit disappointing. But will be interesting to see what 2026 holds for them.
Gaz saying that Horner's also been linked with Cadillac. I think Christian Horner's going to come back in some shape or form as a retribution for what's gone on at Red Bull. So any opportunity that's about, people will be mentioning his name. But looking at Alpine, Franco Colapinto, is there any optimism to be taken from this race weekend? I know he went out in Q1, but he was only 0.2 slower, than his much more experienced teammate. Is it over for Colapinto with regards to future racing in that car, or do you think he can still save it across 9 races?
I think he can save it across 9 races. You know, it's just the beginning of the second half of the season. I think the key for him is to remain consistent and maximize in terms of points, maximize quali, and then try and convert your qualifying position into as many points as possible. And I think that is what will be the saving grace for Colapinto.
Yeah, well, he needs some points because so far it is nil, isn't it?
Exactly.
Looking forward to Kickstake Sauber, as they're currently known. But of course, we know that Audi is nicely bubbling in the background. Pointless race for them, but the first one in 7 races shows the turnaround that team's had. So I don't really want to delve too much into their performance across the weekend. Gabriel Bortoleto had a real poor start, didn't he? He lost a lot of places at the beginning of the race. But Jonathan Wheatley in an interview said that the young man is the real deal. We know that he's got backing from Fernando Alonso and Max Verstappen. How far do you think he can go once he's underneath the Audi leadership, which is going to come with so much weight and power and experience behind it, isn't it?
Exactly. So much pressure. And I think with all this talk comes on, well, what comes with what can you deliver? And they're going to want to be looking for their ROI. What's the return on investment? And so I think Audi are also new to the Formula One space, but they'll be looking for him to perform. And so, he needs to learn as much as he can this season, because I think next season won't be easy.
Yeah, although they have got a lot of experience across motorsport generally. So although, not single seat or open wheel, there's going to be a lot of experts that know their stuff. With regards to the engineering perspective, it's maybe the aero teams where they need to focus their investment. But once again, they've got a hugely experienced driver in the shape of Nico Hülkenberg, 241 races underneath his belt, and everything that he's seen amongst multiple teams will again be priceless within the Audi setup, won't it? But listen, we got about 6 minutes left, but we're going to do more than 6 minutes because there's a lot to discuss for Scuderia Ferrari. Until this race, they completed every lap of every race. So one of the silver linings was reliability. I know that it wasn't down to reliability that they went out of the race today, but a lot of Ferrari fans will have their hands in their heads after this weekend's performance. Let's start with Lewis. What did you make of what happened? It seemed that he lost the car, then got on the slippery part of the track, and it was over.
Yeah, I think it's a series of unfortunate events, which, coming into the second half of the season, you're coming in with new mindset, second half, I'm going to try and maximize and do, as best as I can. So for him to crash out on lap 24, just the beginning of the race, really, coming up to midway, was disappointing. And I think you could definitely see that from Lewis. And whether it was the car, whether it was the bit of rain that was, on the track, I don't know. But I believe now he's been handed a 10-second penalty, I believe, Gary, going into Monza.
Some kind of grid, is it a grid penalty? I think
grid
rather
penalty.
There's some kind of penalty that he's got to take into the next race, which is absolutely killer. Look at this. Ree just wants to skip this segment of the show. But Gary making the point, he should know that part of the track would be slippery. So, Gary there is probably making the point that Lewis should have, when he had the wobble, then should have tried to save it better, perhaps. But how do you save it on? And you don't know how wet the circuit is. There's so many different elements that come into play. It was just a bit tough, and it felt like the gods didn't shine down on Lewis for that particular moment. And then, of course, it absolutely killed Charles Leclerc in that moment, because Charles had pitted the lap before, and then everyone around him could pit on Lewis's safety car, winning 10 seconds in the bag because Charles had done it at full race performance, unfortunately.
Yeah, so unfortunate. And to the point that Gary just made, I've heard on the commentary them saying that perhaps it's like the type of paint that they're using that is causing the track to be slippy when it interacts with water. So that will be a shame if that is the case and that does come out. But it was disappointing that it affected Charles's race, because I think had we not had that safety car, they were both on an incredible run.
Ewan saying that he thinks that Lewis could be close to retiring. I'm surely surely at the very least he's going to take the 2026 season to see how the new regs go in the Ferrari. But again, looking for silver linings in what was a tough time for Lewis, he was, I think off the top of my head, he was under a 10th behind Charles Leclerc in qualifying. And again, it's about being judged against the benchmark of your teammate, and Charles Leclerc has been there a lot longer, a lot more used to that car. So the gap is closer for Lewis. So the system reset perhaps has happened to a certain extent, and he's coming to terms with that car. And although he's got the 5-place grid penalty, do you think he'll still be in a good state of mind to perform in front of the Tifosi next weekend?
I mean, it's a lot of pressure going into Monza for Lewis, but I think if he's able to keep a cool head, which Lewis typically is, qualify well, because I think that's going to be really key for both Lewis and Charles. And then the team game. I think if they're able to work together to bring home maximum points, but also a podium finish, that will be an incredible result.
Ree is saying she thinks he's going to be chasing that 8th title until his hair turns grey. Interesting. I want to go back to this point that Jacques Villeneuve made. And was it a little bit of an indirect dig to Lewis? This thing about, he said, there's Max, then maybe Alonso, then everyone else. What did you make of that?
I think that was a very shady comment to have made, because I think we are looking at the past 3 seasons and judging Lewis based on his performance that, due to extenuating circumstances, or factors have caused him not to be a, championship winning driver. But that doesn't negate from the fact that he was, and he has got, the titles to prove it. So I think it's disappointing, but I hope that doesn't take away from Lewis's wins.
Yeah, in his defense, and you have to remind yourself of certain things. It took Mercedes a season and a half to come out and actually say, oh, there's a problem with our wind tunnel calibration. So
Yeah.
the car, it just wasn't doing what they thought it should be doing. So, all right, George was outperforming Lewis initially, but I think as well, Lewis was happier as the more experienced driver to be the guinea pig in a car that wasn't working, right? By the end of it, Lewis had turned it around, but now he's going again into a very probably similar situation. He's having to be a guinea pig in this car for himself and completely learn a new way of driving it, a new setup, a new way of working. Henry, the hash chap, said many weeks ago that the Ferrari way is the Ferrari way. You don't bring in a
Yeah.
7-time world champion and tell him, all right, we've not won the championship for almost 20 years, but you still need to do what we want. You're bringing in that guy again to be a top consultant, aren't you?
Exactly. And I think no grace is being given to Lewis. You know, going into a position where you're learning, you don't necessarily speak the same language, the car setup's a different way, the people that you're working with operate in a different way. It can be very daunting. It's like going into work and a new job and you're like, whoa, what's going on here? And it takes a while to learn the ropes. Why are we not giving Lewis that same grace and completely negating the fact that he's done this before? But we're forgetting that it's been overshadowed because of his unfortunate performance over the past seasons.
Yeah, a guy that almost won the world championship in his first season and then did win it in his second. Do you think that there perhaps is still quite a few people out there that are unhappy with the success of Lewis Hamilton for whatever reason it may be and are somewhat reveling in what's happening now and can't wait to throw the criticism?
Absolutely. I think Lewis has some great support, and it's only a matter of time that he will go and challenge for the win. Hopefully we'll see that in 2026. But there is also this narrative of, will he retire? He is getting slightly older. He's coming up to the end of his career. What will happen? Who knows?
Ree making the point, completely agrees with you, Debbie. Essentially, he's the greatest of all time and they need to cut him some slack. Ewan making the point, if we turn it to the other side of the garage, Charles Leclerc, will he need to leave Ferrari if he's serious about being a world champion? I can't remember where the source was, but we talked about this either last week or the week before. Sorry, last race or the race before. That has he become almost just content with sitting it out of Ferrari as the golden boy there and just likes that life rather than saying, I want to win a world championship?
I don't think so. I think as a Formula One driver, you want to win. And I think with Leclerc, he was so close to winning. And it was just, again, series of unfortunate events, strategy, Ferrari. But he's come close to winning and he knows what that feels like. And so to say that he might leave Ferrari, I think that could be an option for him and one that he is considering, because I think it's great that Ferrari have bought into Leclerc and they have his buy-in and are working together so that he does become world champion. But I still think at the heart of it, Leclerc's going to put himself first, and at some point we'll get tired because he wants to win.
Yeah. All right, well, that's the whole grid concluded, including the tough time that it was for Ferrari this weekend. Debbie, you've been fantastic on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Last little piece. Next up, all eyes on Monza this weekend coming, right? Quick turnaround there. What are your predictions for it? And I just want to return to that comment from Jack Villeneuve. This could be the only chance to win the world championship for both Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. It's all on the line. How do you think it's going to pan out this weekend in Monza?
I think it's going to be really, really exciting. I think in terms of podium, I think Oscar, Max, and Piastri, I think, will be our top three.
Hang on, you said Oscar, Max, and Piastri. Did you mean Lando?
Sorry, Oscar, Max. Lando, yes.
Okay.
Oscar, Max, and Lando would be my top three, and I say that because they favor high-speed tracks. So that would be my top three. But I think Oscar's got this in the bag.
And for the home race for Ferrari, how are they going to do in Monza this weekend?
I think they'll do really well. I'd love to see P4, P5. It will be exciting if they do challenge the podium. That will be very, very exciting. And I think out of the two of them, he's in a really good position to do that.
Yeah, well, we will keep our eyes peeled. All the action starts from this Friday, so just a couple of days away before the teams go into practice. And then, of course, qualifying Saturday, and the Italian Grand Prix is happening this Sunday. So I'm sure you guys out there will be tuned in. Debbie, I'm sure you're going to be tuned in. And I just want to say, my dear, it was fantastic to have you on the show. It's been a real pleasure. Did you enjoy yourself as well, though?
I absolutely loved it. This is great.
Great stuff. So, of course, we'll be clipping it up and putting it out across the socials and tagging you in it. And you guys out there, thank you so much for joining us here live on the show. Or maybe you're watching on catch up across YouTube. So, again, thank you so much for the support. And please share, whether it be the full show or the little clips we put across the socials, as it really helps us make an impact and build up that momentum. But I'm going to be back with you in a week's time to do this all again. And we have got Ola Zakowski returning, who we had in pre-season, but she's actually attending Monza, and we made that marker really early in the season. I said, if you're going Monza, I want you the Monday night to tell us everything that happened. She's a huge Ferrari fan, so make sure you join us next Monday to get into that. But apart from that, guys, thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your Monday, and have a great week, and we'll see you in 1 week's time.